what's your secret? You got the kind of vibe that leaves men speechless. It could be model multitasking genius. Yeah, you got it all.
Welcome back to Breakthrough Conversations with Rhoda and Company, where we explore stories of resilience, authenticity, and leadership, especially through the lens of powerful women who are breaking barriers and walking in purpose. So I'm your host, I'm Rhoda, and today's guest is someone who embodies grace, healing, and the power of holding space for others. Candice Evans is a social worker, a mental health advocate, a grief counselor, and author of the inspiring book Dig, Develop in Grace. You can get it on her website. You can also get it on Amazon. So through her work with individuals living with several mental illnesses and families navigating end-of-life transitions, Candice has been in the depths of human pain, but also the beauty of healing. So in today's conversation, which I'm so excited to have, we talk about how grace shows up in our hardest seasons and how to be present for others without losing ourselves and what it means to dig deep into our own journey. So if you've ever found yourself in a season of transition, loss, or self-discovery, this episode's for you. So let's dive in. Candice, again, I am so honored to have you here. For those who may not know you, or how would you describe the heart of the work that you do?
Yeah, I like that you use the word heart because I don't think that you can separate what I do from the heart.
Yes.
I definitely think of myself as a heart and mind person, and I really like when the heart and mind connect.
Yes.
And so the heart of what I do is really space, right? I am one that has found that I am a deep thinker. I have a lot of curiosity, and I am able to sit with people during some of their most difficult times. And so the heart of what I do is just allow space for people, space for stories, space for healing, space for discovery, space for transformation. And I connect that to grace, right? And a lot of that involves getting underneath the surface of things. So being okay to discover what's going on and asking the next question and the next question and holding more space and more space. So I like to dig. I know you said let's dive in. I like to dig in. I like to dig in, which that stands for developing grace.
Yes.
And yeah, that's the heart of the work that I do. It's transformational. It's breakthrough related. It's soul and soil related. So I'd like to get into the dirt. I like to get dirty.
Yes.
That's the part of what I do.
Absolutely love this. The way you just articulate that is so beautiful, and it like drew me in. I see you. I said, this is a space giver. She is a giver of space, and guess what? Grace. So before I ask this other question, another question popped in my head, and that is like, how would you define grace?
Yeah. And so space is grace. I really think of grace as every breath you take is an opportunity for grace. Life is grace. And so, I really think of grace as that pause before you react. I think of grace as, again, going beneath the surface.
Yes.
And again, just allowing space to discover. So grace is really an opportunity to grow.
Yes.
And so that's why it's so important to dig and develop in grace, because that's where the growth happens.
And that's why I love the cover, the feeling of your book. I'm going to be reading it. I haven't read it yet. But it's just beautifully designed, and it just represents everything you just said. So you've shared that your superpower is holding space for others. What does it look like in your daily work or in action? And what has it taught you about leadership and humanity?
Yeah. Oh, I love that word, humanity. I was emailing with some folks today, and one of the top people at my employer was like, what do you want from me? And as I reacted to his question, I thought, oh my, let me just go back and backtrack. What do I want?
Right.
And I realized that I already had what I needed. And so I just claimed the space. I said, that's my humanity showing up.
Yes.
And so that's my superpower, is being able to give myself grace and take a step back, because sometimes when you receive information, the email was kind of like, well, what do you want?
Right.
Is the tone that I could have taken. But I just took a step back and I'm like, that's interesting that was worded that way.
Right.
Let me just go back, reread the email chain, and I realized that I had missed something.
Yes.
And in missing something, I had asked a question that wasn't necessary. And so I just claimed it because I think that's so important.
Yes.
And when I claimed my humanity, then the jokes came and, all was well.
Yes.
And so I found that is helpful because I've been in tense situations in life. And so I had to learn how to, one, give myself grace so that I didn't always struggle, because I'm very much, the biggest criticism that I get is the one that I give myself, I found in life. And so in order to be okay and not take things so seriously and be so hard on myself, I really had to learn how to, again, just take that space, give myself the time and the forgiveness that I needed, and to, be able to laugh at myself.
Yes.
So yeah, my superpower and what that looks like in daily life is bringing humor, bringing light to a situation. It is not that serious.
Right.
And, just recognizing that in life, it gets messy.
Yes.
It gets messy. One of my favorite things to say is people be peopling and life be lifing.
That is so true.
That just allows everyone, I feel like, to just be like, oh, that person is just being a person.
Right.
And although I may not like what they're doing, although I may not like what I did, that is the human part of me. And I'm not an alien. I'm just human here. So I'm just being what I'm meant to be.
Yes. And what you just described, that example you used with your colleague, and the way you paused to give yourself grace, and then you went back and you discovered, hey, I asked a question I didn't need to ask. Let me own that, because after all, I am human. Guess what it did? It gave him permission to also see what grace looks like. And then that opened the door for you all to have some humor inside this. And like you said, it's not that serious. I just learned something that quick from you sharing that. And that's something I don't do enough of, is give myself grace and pause. And you know what? It's okay if someone perceived me in a certain way and it wasn't intended to be that way, or that wasn't my intent. And then they create this whole persona of me that's not really accurate. That's also okay. I need to learn how to give myself grace and lean into that and grow more in that. So yeah, I can't wait to dive in or dig in.
Yeah.
Dig in. So Candice, you work in spaces where people are navigating some of life's most difficult moments. How do you care for yourself while caring for others?
Yeah. I forget to do that sometimes, I must admit, because, I get so engrossed with being present with people. So a lot of the times my work is, I would say, preventative and then the post of what I do. And so just making sure, I am a spiritual person. I love God. And so I pray. When I go to bed, I engage in devotion. I journal. I talk to God. When I wake up in the morning, I'm reading word. And so that is very helpful in just grounding me and rooting me in who I am, because once I hit that door, there's no telling what I may encounter in life. And so I've always held the stance that especially working in hospice and working with people who are dying, or even, I've been there when people have taken their last breath. I know that I'm not doing that on my own strength. I just carry that very heavily, that I do not do it on my own strength. And so I believe very strongly in God, and that God is right there with me, supporting me, keeping me lifted up, that He has provided what I need, both mentally, physically, and spiritually, to do what I need to do in the moment. Now, afterwards, sometimes I may be shaken. It's like, how did I do that? But in the moment, that grace is there to give me the space to hold what I need to in those moments. And, again, afterwards, sleep is so important. I really have done well to make sure that I'm staying hydrated. And so I drink water. You'll see me sipping my tea. So there's simple things that I do because I'm a very simple person. And so, a lot of times if I'm in a meeting, or if I'm meeting with someone, or if I'm doing therapy, I'll make sure that I sip. Even sipping is helpful to me, or I have something warm in my hand, or I touch myself and I give myself a rub. So there's things that are just very simple things that I can do to help myself in the moment, or I am very mindful of my breath. And so I will be conscious to slow my breathing down and be intentional and make sure that I'm getting a good inhale in, and then I'm exhaling out and letting that woosah out in the moment. So for me, it's very simple things, but preventative, and then afterwards, and then in the moment, something that someone wouldn't even notice. And I've even taught kids how to do this in school. Like, how do you manage and how do you regulate in school, right? When you can't necessarily get up and leave that space because you might get in trouble. And so, it's what can I do in that moment to make sure that I'm okay? What do I need to have? Do I need to have something in my pocket? Can I rub and know my pressure points in my hand to calm myself down? Can I use my chapstick? What are things that I can do that bring me peace and comfort in the moment?
There was a lot of nuggets in there, a lot of nuggets of self-care. So for those that are viewing, I hope they captured those. I'll do my best to recap. When it comes to self-care, what I heard you say is, number one, you keep it simple. It doesn't have to be some big grand thing that we cannot sustain. These seem like they become habits. So these habits are formed, and they help you manage and regulate in the moments. So you make sure you get your sleep. Number one, prayer. Yes, a woman of faith myself. And leaning into your relationship with the Lord, and making sure you get a good, healthy dose of Him and His Word first thing in the morning. Because like you said, once that day starts and you go out into the world, you're going to need some of that to pull from. So if your cup is empty, then you could struggle. So you make sure you do that. You're getting your sleep. You're staying hydrated. See, people think that's funny when they say things about staying hydrated. That's real. And our body is struggling when we're not hydrating and we're not nourishing it with the nourishment that it needs. And it needs water, and it needs good liquids to make sure that we are regulating properly. All those are good tactics. Everything you just shared is very powerful. And I love that these have become habits. They're healthy habits that are built into your norms. So let's talk about your book. What inspired Dig, and what do you hope readers walk away with?
Yeah, Dig came about in a season in life where I was busy raising kids, in a position where I had a lot of people that I was responsible for, managing programs, people, all the things, in both my professional and personal life. And I just felt a lot of weight, and I felt like it was crushing me. And I remember taking that natural part of myself, that curious part of myself, and wondering, what's going on with you, sis? And as I did that, I just remember feeling like almost like a breeze coming on me, and calmness. And also just, you don't have to figure it all out. You can take time, but also let's do some work here. And so that's how it came about, is just really taking some time to dig. And the word grace just has, I've always been one that has known that life comes with struggle,
Yes.
but I've always been one that my prayer, is let it come with ease, that I can handle it. And when I started thinking about that, I just started thinking about how important grace is for me. And yeah, and then, I'm one that loves nature. I really enjoy what nature brings in terms of calming me, the metaphors of it. And so that's how Dig came about, is, in order to grow in grace, that's what it started out as, that, you got to get on your gig and grow in grace, but that was already taken. So it became develop in grace. And I've just really, really honored that in myself. And then eventually when I did that, it began to, it's almost like the rain coming down and like the overflow and the residue, and it going and spreading to other places. And I felt that within my life, within my children's life, and my spouse's life, they were also getting some of that residual from my soul and my soil work. And so I was able to really get to the roots of the situation, which, I learned about roots from working in hospice, and I really gravitated towards that, how root systems, they support each other like a family system. And when one part of the roots needs nutrients or support, the other parts send them there. So as I was doing work with families who had experienced a loss, that visual from that poem and that information that I read became powerful. And I actually started a group at the hospice that I was working with called Rooted in Hope, for families who had experienced a loss. And so the roots with the grace, it just became the perfect combination of being able to support people and knowing that underground is where the support is. So you got to get to the root of the situation in order to grow and develop.
That is so true. That is so powerful. And I say this a lot, is that our chances of being born are really slim. If you Google this, it's like 1 in 400 billion, some ridiculous number.
Wow.
And so the fact that you are here means that you have purpose. And it sounds like you found your purpose. You are leaning into it. You're serving in the way that you're meant and designed to serve in. That's very special, because a lot of people float through life not recognizing that you're here for a purpose, and it's more than what they just think their day-to-day could be. It's bigger than that. And so I'm so proud of you for stepping out, because when you and I talk, you share you're kind of introverted, but you stepped out. Writing a book and putting things in writing for others to read takes courage. And all the lives that you're touching with the work that you're doing, this book is just simply going to propel and open doors for you to be able to touch even more lives. You have such an anointing and special calling on you. I feel it through the screen even, and I felt it when we talked on the phone. So I am just so honored that we connected and that we're here. We took it out of the LinkedIn chat, and it's right here. So thank you for that. So on this podcast, we talk about breakthrough moments. So what was a breakthrough moment in your own life where grace led the way?
Breakthrough moment. Let's see. I would have to say, I always say this, that I like to go hard in the paint. I have a lot of energy. I'm a passionate person. I'm an advocate as a social worker. When I get after something, I like to get after it. And so, what I found, my breakthrough moment was I was doing boot camps, 5 a.m. boot camps, like 4 times a week. And just, living my best life, eating good, feeling good. So I thought. But then I just started getting injury after injury and felt pain after pain. And I'm like, well, what is going on with me? I'm going hard in the paint. I'm working out, eating and all the things.
Right.
And so I started going to a chiropractor. And one of the first things he said was, and I think he was being playful, but obviously I haven't been able to let it go,
Right.
was, you have the body of a 60-year-old woman.
What?
And I am not 60 years old, quite a lot younger than that. And so that was a wake-up call for me. And so I started going down this journey of like all these doctor's appointments and medication and yada, 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 all the things that my natural tea loving self, I don't even put sugar in my tea, you know,
You just
I
like
just was
tea.
like, whoa, what is going on with me?
Right.
And so that led to me being with a doctor, and their diagnosis essentially was pretty much boiled down to wear and tear. I had wore and tore up my body. And a lot of it was related to tension and stress. And so there's a book, it's called The Body Keeps the Score. And the body definitely kept the score. And so for me, what I started to say, and I say this in my book, you know, Oprah says something like, in The Color Purple, all my life I had to fight. And I say in my book, all my life I'm not going to fight.
Right.
And so, you know, for me, I say grace taught me that I can put my shovel down, you know, because I say dig, but dig looks different at different times. Sometimes it looks like just sitting down in your garden, just taking inventory and resting. I've done a lot of work, you know, I've been fighting, so I've built a lot of things in my life. And by everyone looking in, very successful, but my body kept the score of all that work. And so I no longer need to go hard in the paint, unless I'm going hard in the paint with rest, you know. So I use my days, I take my leave from work, right? You know, I give myself grace when I don't want to do all the things, you know, the house may be a little messy, you know, so even coming on the call today, right? I'm like, oh no, I don't have a background. I've got some things I got to pick up from behind me, you know, and so just give myself grace, because I wasn't going to clean those things up. I've been busy, promoting my book and things like that. So some things in the household, I just let them be. And that's really it. Grace. I just let them be. I'll get to them. And so that has been the grace, the breakthrough, and how grace has led my way is, for me, it's survival, but it's flipped from survival into how I've been able to thrive. Because as you see me here, I feel like I'm shining. I feel really good in my mind, spirit, and body. I took a year off from doing the strenuous strength training workouts, did yoga and walking, and I'm still, you know, I'm as strong physically as you see me, but I don't have the pain as before. And so, you know, that was very healing and such a breakthrough moment for me, that I don't have to. Strength redefined by grace is a chapter in my book. And so strength looks different for me now than it would have looked a couple of years ago.
That's beautiful. That is a beautiful story and such a lesson for others to learn from, right? Especially as women and women of color. We tend to be the matriarchs, the one that carry it all. People come to us for all advice, and we think we're doing a service. And to your point, our body is keeping score. Maybe that explains some of the pain I feel when I get up, when I stand up. Extending yourself grace. That is so powerful. So what would you say, Candice, to a woman navigating a season like of grief or a transition or self-discovery right now? What advice would you give that person?
Yeah, it's interesting, because one of my favorite sayings is that I'm becoming who I am. And so, you know, it doesn't matter what I'm going through, what I'm doing, what I'm not doing, because I think that's probably more so the issue as we worry about what we're not doing and what we haven't done and what we didn't do right. And so I would say take a moment, right? And really think about, one, focus on the things that you are doing and stay rooted.
Yes.
Stay in it, stay in the soil. Okay. I spoke at a women's brunch recently, and I talked about how sometimes we get distracted by others' blooms.
Yes.
And I use this metaphor of the roots, the stem, and the bloom.
Yes.
And talked about how it doesn't matter where you are in that phase, right? Whether you're in the roots of it and you're dirty, things aren't looking how you want to look, you don't really understand, whether you're the stem trying to hold everything upright and all together, or whether you're in that transition of the bloom. A rose is still a rose.
It's still a rose.
You are becoming who you are. And that's why grace is so important, because we judge ourselves or we pit ourselves or compare ourselves against other people. Trust that where you are, where you're planted, wherever you're planted, however you planted, that's where you're meant to be. And work with the soil you have. Till it, water it, sit in it, whatever you need to do, work with what you have and who you are, and trust that as you do little by little, because it's a process. It's all just a process. You'll get there. But we stall ourselves, we hurt ourselves, we grieve ourselves by focusing in on what we didn't do, on the woulda, coulda, shouldas. Of life.
I like to say that comparison is a thief of joy. And this is really bad in today's world with social media and all these other outlets. You have access to other people, what you perceive as their life. Most of the time, it's people are portraying it to be something that it's not. And people start to compare themselves, especially our younger generation. They're comparing themselves and trying to obtain something, A, that's not meant for them, or B, something that isn't even real. Because let's not even talk about body image. Like, a lot of these photos and things that people are comparing themselves to, it's false. It's not even obtainable. And so that is so true. What you just said is to honor your journey, honor your gifts, honor what you were meant to do, and honor where you are at that given moment, and trust that this is the time and space that I'm supposed to be at right now. Reflect, what is it that I'm supposed to be learning and giving and serving in this moment in time? So that's very wise. So what advice would you give to women, especially those in leadership? Because I'm really passionate about the huge responsibility that comes with leading others. What advice would you give to women in leadership about prioritizing their mental health while holding space for others, leading teams, and navigating high expectations? I just heard you describe all the things that you were carrying, and you had big role with big responsibility. You were doing lots of things for your children, your family, etc. And you've gone on a journey. What advice would you give women?
I think that rest is so important, and finding a way to take the mask off, I will say. I was in some meeting somewhere, and one of my favorite poems is Beneath the Mask. And I think it's so important to get beneath that and to take that off sometimes, to rest, rest yourself. But I want to tie this into one of the metaphors that I've been and have a transparent moment. I often have been looked at as, people say, Candice, how do you hold it all together? You look like it's so easy for you. And so over the years, I've realized that I'm probably causing more harm, especially to my younger sisters, or anyone who's trying to get to that place, right? Because they may be going hard in the paint and maybe exhausting themselves, as I was.
Yes.
So, I found myself thinking of myself as and describing myself to people as the duck, right? I have a lake in my backyard, and the metaphor of the duck gets me every time, because on the surface, the duck is just gliding,
Yes.
all cool, calm, and collected. But underneath, that duck is paddling, its feet are stirring to get it to its destination. And so that's how I describe myself a lot of times.
Right.
But what I've learned is that I don't have to paddle like that, right? I can trust the current. I can rest my frantic feet. When the duck's feet stop, it's not going to sink to the bottom. Yes, it may not get to where it wants to go as quickly, but it will get there. And so that's definitely a metaphor that I hold close to myself.
Yes.
And, in terms of that wisdom, one of the things that I've said recently, because I work in the governmental system, and someone checked in on me and they're like, "How are you doing?" And I just hit them with this very simple. I said, "The system is crazy. I am not."
Right.
You just have to know your roots, okay?
Yes.
I know my roots. The
Yes.
system is crazy. I am not. And
Right.
also, who am I to change this big old system? It's
Yes.
important for me to take care of myself in this
Yes.
system, and as a leader, the people connected to me, right?
Yes.
And so being transparent about some of my struggles, being transparent and authentic that I don't know, we've got this, we're going to do this together. Encouraging people, hey, times are not easy right now. What are you doing? Take your time. Oh, but if I take my leave, what if something happens to me? Take your time, because it's preventative, right? I said that I really focus on preventative and then the after effect, right?
Yes.
The preventative is knowing that if I take my time, what I like to say is, I need to sit down before I get sat down.
Right.
So most of the time, if I take my time and I have wellness days versus sick days, because that's stupid. I want to take a day to be sick.
When you're sick.
I want to take a day and be well in the day.
Yes.
So take those days. And I found that I have less need for days where I'm taking off because I'm sick.
Yes.
And so taking rest seriously, and not just sleep rest, yes, but also rest in the job.
Yes.
I go for walks all the time now. I went for a walk today. I came in with my heels, looking at everything. And, after we got done with about 2 hours of meeting, the other leaders are looking at me, and I said, I'm going to put my tennis shoes on and I'm going for a walk. I'm going for a walk. I don't have to be in here every day.
All day.
Whatever needs to get solved will get solved when I get back here. And I'll be the better for it, because I got some vitamin D.
Yes.
I walked, which allowed me to open up my right and left brain.
Yes.
Walking does that.
Yes.
And so those are some things that I would say is just remember who you are.
Yes.
Remember that you are human. Humans need to take care of themselves through rest.
Yes.
And focus in on the preventative, and then what will you do? Trust, right? If you're that duck paddling, trust that the current will get you to where you need to be. You do not have to work so hard.
That was so powerful when you were, I was visualizing a duck under the water. And one of my favorite quotes is, "Don't push the river." And working against the river is only going to wear you out. Follow it and let it take its natural course, and trust that it's going to drop you off right where you are designed and intended to be.
Good.
That's so powerful. That is such wonderful, beautiful words of wisdom. I'm so glad that we cross paths. Like, this is such wisdom and richness. And yes, being your authentic self, showing up as that vulnerable person. You talked about taking the mask off. Could you give the viewers a couple of tips on how do I take, like, some people have put this persona on for so long, they don't even know how to take the mask off. So even when we say take it off, they don't know how. What advice would you give them?
Yeah. You have to start with you. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you have to strip away everybody else and
Mm-hmm.
get with yourself in
Mm-hmm.
quiet.
Mm-hmm.
When you find yourself in a quiet space, thoughts are going to come up, and it's
Yes.
very revealing. If you can't get quiet, that's revealing.
Yes.
There's some
Yes.
masking going
It
on.
is.
If you cannot
Yes.
sit still enough for 5 minutes,
Right.
and I remember I did this class, a life group at church, and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
pray for 5 minutes. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, wait, and I just kept struggling. I would
Mm-hmm.
get
Mm-hmm.
distracted. And that helped me to know I'm having some focus issues
Mm-hmm.
here.
Mm-hmm.
I have some major focus issues, so much so that, as a matter of fact, a year ago,
Mm-hmm.
within this last year, I was diagnosed with ADHD for the first time.
Yeah, I bet we all have it.
Oh, yeah, I love to say we're all on the spectrum.
Right.
We are
Yes.
all on the
Everyone.
spectrum. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you start to give yourself and just play like, there's nothing wrong with me, I am
Mm-hmm.
on the spectrum of
Mm-hmm.
life.
Mm-hmm.
And at certain points, I struggle a little bit more, but there are points when I do okay. And
Right.
again, that's where I say grace comes
Mm-hmm.
in.
Mm-hmm.
Sit with yourself, quiet yourself,
Mm-hmm.
listen for what comes up, even if it's something that you don't like, that you
Right.
hear or see or feel or think.
Mm-hmm.
Pay attention to that.
Yes.
Notice it. Don't judge it. One of
Yes.
my favorite things to tell people in my therapist practice is
Mm-hmm.
to stop.
Yes.
Stop stands for, the acronym of it says stop. That's S.
Mm-hmm.
T is take a breath.
Mm-hmm.
O is observe.
Yes.
What do you notice? What thoughts, feelings,
Mm-hmm.
sensations are you
Mm-hmm.
having?
Mm-hmm.
And P is proceed.
Yes.
Learn how to just have a non
Yes.
judgmental,
Mm-hmm.
objective presence about yourself.
Yes.
Because if you can be
Mm-hmm.
okay and proceed,
Mm-hmm.
then you'll keep going deeper and you'll keep proceeding, and you're going to do what you naturally do, right? The current's going to take you
Yes.
to where you're going to go.
Yes.
You're going to grow and
Yes.
bloom as you're meant to
Mm-hmm.
bloom. You're
Mm-hmm.
going to become who you are.
And that's the power of grace, because what you just described was stop. That's giving yourself grace to do those things you just outlined, and then trust that you will end up where you need to be. I mean, this is deep. You're onto something here with this with Dig. Again, Dig, Developing Grace by Candice Evans. Where can they connect with you, get your book, hear you speak, hire you to come speak at one of their women's brunches? How can they connect with you, Candice?
Yeah, thank you. So, Dig Developing Grace is available on Amazon,
Mm-hmm.
Barnes and Noble, really anywhere that you can purchase a book
Mm-hmm.
online. And then for signed copies of my book, it's available at developinggrace.com.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to reach out to me, you can do that at info@developinggrace.com. And my Instagram, Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
I love LinkedIn,
Yeah,
y'all.
me
You
too.
can find me at Developing Grace. So, yeah, I'd
Yeah.
love for you to hear. I'd love to hear from you.
Mm-hmm.
I consider myself growing a big old community garden,
Mm-hmm.
one garden
Mm-hmm.
at a time. And so
Yes.
I really want us to dig to grow our gardens together. So stay
Yes.
tuned. I'm just getting started.
Wow. So,
Yeah.
Candice, again, I'm happy to be one of the flowers that's in your garden now. I'm in it now.
You're
So,
in
what that is
it.
this was such a rich discussion. I sincerely appreciate it. All I can say is wow. What a powerful reminder that grace isn't something we have to earn. It's something we can choose to live in, even when life feels heavy. I remember my father-in-law, who was my pastor for 20 plus years, he's passed on. He used to define grace as God's unmerited favor. It's something you cannot earn, but it is given to you freely. So we can give it to ourselves. I'm so grateful to Candice for sharing her heart, her work, and her wisdom with us today. If her words resonated with you, I encourage you to check out her book, Dig, Developing Grace. She just named. You can get them on all platforms, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or at her website. It's a companion for reflection, healing, and personal growth, and it might just be what your soul needs right now. Dig into that soul. So don't forget to subscribe and leave a review And share this episode once it drops with someone who's learning to hold space for themselves or others. Remember, every conversation, every breakthrough starts with a conversation. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Candice.
Thank you.
Hey, what's your secret? You got the kind of vibe that leaves me speechless. It could be model multitasking genius. Yeah, you got it all. Hey, what's your story? A kick-ass mom and 40 under 40. A soccer practice in your high heel glory. Yeah, you do it all.